Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
And we're back. I'm Roger Stone. You know, this is one of my favorite quotes. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs but keeps coming up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But the man who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the very best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, well, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory or defeat. Those, of course, are the words of President Theodore Roosevelt, but essentially rediscovered by President Richard Nixon, who used them as the preface for his book. As I was saying, Mrs. Stone and I planning to head to the inauguration, and what you're wearing to me is quite important. I will be wearing the traditional morning suit, including the top hat during the day, and for the White House balls, by the way, it's white tie and tails, although the invitations say tuxedo. It's white tie, which is black tie, but it's white tie and tails. Anyway, I'm sure he's going to be at the inauguration as well. Joining me now, former Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida's 1st District, and now the host of the Matt Gaetz Show on the One America News Network. Matt, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on, Roger. And I saw the Twitter post of your fit, and here's my one question. And I've always wondered this: is it okay to wear striped shirt with striped pants?
You're allowed to.
What's the protocol on that?
Well, if you are reading, I just looked this up online. You are allowed to customize the shirt. So the body of the shirt could be light blue and the collar white. But yes, depends on the width of the stripes. I think that's the answer. Look, Mac,
what should be the protocol people use when assessing whether or not a striped shirt works with a striped pant?
The wider the stripe in your shirt, the better it will work with more closely striped pants. Okay. But remember, the rules are made to be broken. Once you master the rules, you're allowed to break them. Matt Gaetz is a fighter. He is a brawler, man of enormous courage, who's been the recipient of some of the most vicious smears. There is no one more important than the rise of the America Great Movement, and I'm honored to have him. He resigned from the House upon being announced as a candidate for Attorney General He withdrew from that race when he determined that the smears and attacks on him would be a distraction to the new administration, a selfless act. And now he's over there at OAN with my friend Vish Burrow, where he has one of the hottest political commentary programs on the net and on cable. Matt, have you learned, as I have, it's a lot tougher to be the guy asking questions than the guy answering them?
I enjoy both, and I have, done both a good amount. In Congress, I think my principal skill was asking the tough questions of oftentimes the corrupt members of the Biden administration and even occasionally wayward members of the Trump administration. And asking questions is an art, no doubt. And sometimes in Congress, you only have a few minutes, and the people you're asking questions of have very deft skills in filibustering and evading the question. But I also have had to answer them, when I've done tough programs on MSNBC or CNN or the Sunday morning shows. So, I enjoy what I get to do now, and that is bringing an audience to the front lines of the MAGA revolution. And the revolution is still underway. You know that. I know that. I think a lot of the casual observers might say, well, we elected Trump. He's got Elon helping him. We can throw our hands up in the air now and assume that it's all been done. But the reality is there are still people trying to infiltrate this administration who have the same broken neocon America Last views that have guttered the Republican Party in elections before Donald Trump. And so we've got to remain diligent. We've got to play whack-a-mole at times. We've got to expose what's going right and wrong in both political parties to get the full value out of this movement.
I could not agree more. Unfortunately, in the first administration, there were some people, Republicans on paper at least, who thought their job was to dilute, delay, or derail the president's America First agenda. This time, I'm confident that we will have far fewer. It'd be nice to have none. But the president seems much more focused on all levels of this transition as he was not last time. He's really dug in, looking at not just at cabinet secretaries, not just the top jobs, but the second layer, deputy assistant secretaries, and the heads of the independent agencies like the FEC or the SEC. He's very deeply engaged. I think that's a very positive thing, because I think we're getting a lot more likely to get appointees who understand their job is to carry out the president's agenda, not their own agenda. Matt, you correctly predicted online the re-election of Speaker Johnson. Johnson would not be Speaker but for your courageous action in bringing down what I think was the misguided, being nice, leadership of Kevin McCarthy. You showed enormous grit in that process under enormous pressure, and I think every American owes you a debt of gratitude, certainly every Republican.
Well, thanks for saying so. The goal we had was to end the era of the imperial speakership, where the speaker had such exquisite tools and exquisite powers as to bend the people's house to the will of the lobbyists and the special interests who've sold out this country for multiple generations. And in Mike Johnson, we don't have a perfect speaker. I think he would acknowledge that, though I think he's a very, very good man. But even in Johnson, you've now seen under this new paradigm the limits of the speakership. When the 1,500-page omnibus spending bill came out that Trump opposed, that so many opposed, we were able to defeat it. And that never would have happened before. Speakers got their Christmas omnibus bills as a matter of pattern and practice. And Johnson didn't have the ability to force that down the throats of the American people because there was substantial resistance, and that resistance felt empowered. And Roger, when you talk about the depth of President Trump's involvement, I think I can give real context and color to this. When I was the Attorney General designate, President Trump was weighing in as far down as to the specific U.S. attorneys in specific jurisdictions. That was not where we were in 2017. And it shows the evolution and the strength and the power and the success of where President Trump is right now, that he's saying, okay, I know, the Southern District of New York really matters. I know the Southern District of Florida really matters. I know that the D.C. U.S. Attorney matters, and the Eastern District of Virginia. And so he's applying his exquisite talents to the areas that might have been delegated in the past, but now are firmly within his grip. And when you look at the other area of the deep state, great control, it's the State Department. You know that, I know that. Now President Trump is weighing in on specific ambassadors in specific posts, and I actually think that will help us on the foreign policy stage. It will help us convey to the world that the people who carry America's voice are directly tied to the goals and ambitions and agenda of our transformational president.
I agree with you about Speaker Johnson. I support him because the president supports him. I think he has a very difficult job. He's got half the guys in the caucus don't want to do anything. Half the people in the caucus, don't want to do anything. Others are firebrands who want to push the America First agenda and also expose the corruption of the Democrats. I was disappointed that the continuing resolution, we were initially told it had no new spending in it, when in fact I think it had $180 million in new spending. So it wasn't just a stopgap to keep the government running. And you're right, Matt. It was we had a vigorous debate within our own ranks, and we ended up pushing something much more stripped down that was better for the American taxpayer. I saw speculation last week that you are contemplating a race for governor of Florida. For those who don't know, Governor Ron DeSantis is term limited, cannot run for another term. His term ends in 2026. You would be a very strong candidate. What's your current thinking?
Well, I'm still thinking, and I'm talking to my wife about it, and I'm praying about it. Roger, you and I met back in the days when I was a state lawmaker. We initially sketched out the strategy to have marijuana reform in Florida. That was something that was deemed really inconceivable before you and I teamed up on that effort and got the ball rolling. And now, while it might not be where all Floridians want it, it certainly advanced from where it was in the early 2010s. I've been to every corner of the state. I know the big cities and the small towns, and I know what our strains are with high price for the quality of life we were able to once maintain. Oftentimes it's insurance companies pushing that high price on Floridians, and many have left as a consequence. And I didn't dedicate my whole life to the betterment of Florida just to see all the Floridians I love and care about driven out and forced to live elsewhere because it costs so much to live in the state. And so, making a real affordability plan, making a plan for Florida to be affordable for the people who live here now would be my central focus. But I think that really the person who's going to be governor of Florida is who President Trump wants to be the governor of Florida. And we'll all be ready in the event that, that leadership opportunity calls.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, this is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. We're talking to former Congressman Matt Gaetz. Now has the Matt Gaetz Show over at OAN, becoming very hot. Don't go away, folks, because we'll be right back with more of Matt Gaetz and his unique insights into the Trump presidency, where we go from here. When we come back, I want to ask Matt about the vacancy being created in the Senate by the resignation of Senator Marco Rubio, another friend and man I admire, and what's going to happen to that seat. So, folks, whatever you do, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with more of Matt Gaetz.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
This episode is brought to you by Cadillac. Cadillac certified service technicians are factory trained to fit your vehicle with the tires specifically developed for it. And with our tire price match guarantee, you get the best fit for the best deal. Let us do the work. Available on select eligible tire brands at participating dealers only. Offer ends 12/31/2025. Terms apply. See dealer for complete details. Visit Cadillac.com/service to learn more.
Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant. 9.5 plus pH, now in cans.
Refreshing.
Made for every way you move.
Should I run a marathon?
Let's start with finishing that water. Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant, now in a sleek can. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
And we're back. We're visiting with former Congressman from Florida's 1st District, Matt Gaetz. He is now the host of the Matt Gaetz Show on One America News Network. You don't want to miss this hot new show. Matt, as I said before the break, because Marco Rubio will resign to become Secretary of State, this causes a vacancy in the Senate to which Governor Ron DeSantis is entitled to make an appointment. There'll be a special election in 2026 to fill that seat. I see our mutual friend Corey Mills, another man I admire, tough America First Republican who served his country with distinction, announcing that he will seek that seat in 2026. Who do you think the governor will appoint, and what are the politics of this?
You and I both know Florida is a state in rapid change. It used to be a purple state where folks like Mel Martinez were viewed as the ideal Senate candidates. And now you've got a state that looks a lot more like Arkansas, with 1.2 million more Republicans registered than Democrats. And so the Republican primary becomes dispositive. My assumption is that Ron DeSantis will appoint Ashley Moody, and that's for a couple reasons. One, Ashley Moody is the most popular Floridian who endorsed Ron DeSantis for president. And you and I have covered Ron. We've agreed on Ron at times, disagreed on him at others. And Ron is a person who greatly values loyalty, and the most popular Floridian who has endorsed him would likely be someone he would want as a beachhead for any prospective 2028 presidential ambition he would have. The other reason to appoint Ashley Moody is that Ron understands that in an appointment, you can actually create multiple backfills. And if Ron appoints Ashley Moody to the United States Senate, he would then get to appoint his chief of staff or really anyone else he wanted to become the next Attorney General of Florida, which is a highly important, coveted, sought-after position. So I think that you're likely to see that selection. I think that Ashley Moody would make a fine U.S. Senator, but if Corey Mills were to run, he would be a game changer. He's very, very effective He has no fear, and that's what I admired in him as a colleague in the House. He does not get rattled by the typical tools that leadership deploys to try to get somebody to do what they want. And the problem in the United States Senate is that even when we elect smart, tough, good people, they become highly susceptible to the wills of the leadership. And I mean, what are the big wins we can look to our Republican senators and thank them for, Roger? I think we've had mutual concern about the direction of how the Republican Party looks in that body.
Kind of an obvious question, though, and that is clearly Ron DeSantis still aspires to run for president. I think it was President Nixon once told me nobody reaches for that brass ring and loses it and doesn't dream of reaching for it again. On the other hand, he's term limited. He would be out of power from 26 to 28. No fulcrum for raising money, by the way. Why not appoint a caretaker to the seat, someone who will fill the term until the 26 election, and then seek the seat himself? Were he to win it, would actually enhance his chances of being a viable presidential candidate in the future. He'd probably also be the front runner, at least poll-wise. I don't think he would go unchallenged, but why not take that course? Otherwise, in 2028, he is a former governor of Florida. Tough place to make a comeback from.
Well, but Ron is very well thought of in the billionaire class of our party, which you know. And Ron's a very smart guy. He performs very well with that group. But you and I know the answer to that question. Ron doesn't view himself as one among many, as a legislator or lawmaker. Ron views himself as an executive. And he's been a very effective executive in Florida. He has won battles in Florida that conservatives have been fighting for years, and I applaud him for that. I think the issue with Ron is that he lacks some of the charming, warm personality traits that we've seen reflected in the people we choose to be our presidential nominees in both parties. And so being a figment of Washington, a guy who gets on TV as a senator, I don't think that appeals to him as much as as going straight from the governor's mansion back to the fields of Iowa, where I could tell you, Roger, I campaigned a long time in Iowa. I always knew Trump was going to win Iowa. But even though people thought very highly of Trump and they weren't going to abandon him, they also thought highly of Ron. He lost that race by a very large margin while maintaining a relatively high approval rating. And I think that he's going to be interested in plowing those fields again rather than traversing the halls of the Senate.
Interesting. I do think he sustained some serious damage from the fact that he owes his nomination and his election to Donald Trump. As you well know, he was running far behind, both in terms of the polls and in fundraising, until President Trump elected to endorse him, largely because he had seen Congressman DeSantis on the talk shows on Fox and heard him on the radio defending the president during the Russian collusion hoax, unaware of the fact that Ron had declined to endorse Trump after he was a nominee in 2016. But that one tweet skyrocketed Ron to a leading position in the primary, as you know, and then the president helped drag him across the finish line. At 42 years old, many people think that perhaps Ron should have waited, supported the president, campaigned aggressively for him outside the state, and kind of wait his turn. In our party, we nominated Bob Dole, who I loved, past his sell date. We nominated John McCain past his sell date. But waiting your turn in our party, as you know, is a very big thing.
Yeah, Ron should have waited. I told him that. Many told him that. But Ron has believed for some time, I think, that he ought to be president. And I think he has a lot of the leadership skills that you would want in a president. But in order to be president, you have to win an election. And to win a presidential election, you have to win either the Iowa caucuses or the New Hampshire primary in the Republican Party. And to prevail in those contests, you have to show charisma and personal warmth and care for people and a desire to stay late for the last selfie and indulge an extended conversation on maybe a niche policy issue. And those aren't skills that Ron DeSantis possesses. And I don't think they'll be skills he possesses in 2028. But, we started down this rabbit hole on the question of who would be a Senate appointment from Ron DeSantis, a decision entirely within his control. And I think that the organizing principle on that decision will be who will function as the best beachhead for Ron in his own mind for a 2028 contest. I don't think that he's likely to be the nominee in 2028. My suspicion is that Donald Trump will have a transformational, effective presidency, and that people will be eager to see what J.D. Vance can do thereafter. But that's not how Ron sees it. You can see from the recent gathering at Mar-a-Lago where he was quite eager to use the microphone and lambaste reporters that he wants to be the head of this party after Donald Trump.
I completely agree with your analysis that he sees things differently than perhaps the rest of us. You have certainly visited the president at Mar-a-Lago. His palatial estate now turned into a private club built in the 1920s by Meriwether Post, donated to the federal government, long boarded up, locked up, 15 years. President Richard Nixon and his best friend, Bibi Rebozo, flew there to examine it and see if it were possible for use as a Southern White House. But Nixon declined, believing it being too grandiose, too magnificent, not in keeping with his everyman kind of working class style. President Trump has restored it. It is truly magnificent. But Matt, the scene there, we have about 3 minutes to go, so this is tough to do. But it's an incredible experience visiting the president for dinner, sitting out on the patio. Tell our listeners just quickly what it's like.
Well, it means something very magical to me. I met my wife at Mar-a-Lago. I was engaged to my wife at Mar-a-Lago. I was with the president when he made the decision to take out Soleimani on that patio. And right now, it's the center of the universe. You've got world leaders, you've got titans of technology and innovation and industry all coming there to kiss the ring. And Roger, just, it's a perfect note for you and I to end on it. There's a stark contrast to what all of us were going through in 2017. You were getting accused of ridiculous crimes. You were getting drugged before congressional committees for the third, fourth time. President Trump was accused of being a Russian agent. And now, instead of delegitimizing Trump, you've got everybody trying to get close to him. That presents opportunity. It also presents risk. We should be prepared to analyze both and act accordingly.
I could not agree more. Thank you, former Congressman Matt Gaetz. Be sure to watch his show over there at the One America News Network. Matt, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Roger. Take care.
All right, folks, that's it for us today, but you don't want to go anywhere because my good friend Joe Piscopo is coming right along. This guy has a set of pipes himself, but he's going to be playing a lot from the chairman of the board, old Blue Eyes himself. So stand by for Sundays with Sinatra coming up next here at 77 WABC, the crown jewel of AM radio.